Hello everyone, my name is Paul and today I'm joined with
Nathan Gomez, and today we have a special guest that we invited here.
Hi everyone, I'm Sir Pradhan, and I am these guys' friend, and I love to talk about anything.
Mm-hmm.
So hit me on with that.
Yeah, welcome. Very nice to have you here today.
So our first guest of a podcast. So hopefully we can have a different conversation and gain new perspectives. So if you have any topic that you're really interested in talking about, or you want to give a brief history of just who you are, where you come from, you can just go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Well, I come from this lovely country called Nepal. It's bordered by China in the north and India in the south. I have interest on a lot of different things like politics, history, technology, and generally how these things can be used to solve the problems that we have right now in this world.
Very good. Nepal, it's not the closest country to here, and the culture is also quite different than what we're used to here in Europe.
That's right.
But yeah, maybe you can just tell a little bit about how it was for you growing up in a different part of the world, and yeah, how maybe also how you see our culture here in the West, how things that you see are different, things that you see are similar for humans both in Nepal as in Sweden and on other places where you've lived.
For me personally, it's not that different because for when in my upbringing I have had both a balanced experience between Nepali culture and other Western cultures. But I would not be a representative of all of the people in the country. So I would say, at least in developed cities in the country, we are focused. We have westernized culture, but we do have our own culture as well. So we do practice our own culture in both in rural and urban areas.
Yeah.
But I guess because you also lived in the States,
Yes,
right?
I did.
So I also lived in the States. So how do we consider the differences between the U.S. Just society and the one here in Sweden, for example?
Both are great places, but there's some things in the US that we don't have here. For instance, the way the freedom has been defined in the US, the liberty and all that, that's much prevalent there than here. For instance, you can talk about gun rights, for instance. It's more prevalent in the US and we don't have it in Europe. I'm not saying I don't have any bias in that, but
What do you mean we can't talk about it?
I didn't say we can talk about it. We can talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, here in Europe, or
We don't have it.
Yeah.
We don't have the liberty in that sense. But
what do you mean by the liberty?
well, some people would consider it to be a liberty if you can own a gun.
Okay.
If you consider it as a liberty yourself, then we don't have that here.
Okay.
But then if you're fine with it, you're fine with it.
Okay. Do you see any drawbacks in the gun?
I don't see any drawbacks in not having guns.
Okay, yeah. So but what do you consider a problem? Society having guns the way that they have it freely in the U.S.
Yes, that tells it by itself, like whatever happening around.
Okay.
Okay. It's especially the gun law, I think, is a very interesting topic as well, because we're here in Europe, oftentimes we don't really have this picture, or oftentimes we think it would be very nice, a lot more freedom. And on the other hand, there are many people here in Europe that are very afraid of owning a gun or just being around guns, because that's very much connected to death and destruction, and something that we here in Europe said we want to stay away from as far as possible. But in the US, it was a very different situation how it was instructed.
Yes, that's correct.
But I mean, that was, I think the thing with the U.S. is that they're just so stuck up in their constitution. Like, they take this book as like the holy grail of everything, not realizing that the book was written 200, 300, 300 years, 1776 was it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite an old book, and the world was quite different back then. Maybe you did need a gun because people were trying to steal. There was, for example, if you killed someone, you could have probably gotten away with it if there was no witnesses, right? But now it's completely different. And we're in a world where we don't need those things. And guns have become also way more powerful. So now a gun can do way more damage than a gun could do in 1776. So I think it's important to also adapt the Constitution for how the life is right now. And I actually, in my opinion, I don't believe, I think in the US, when you grow up in that culture and when you study high school there's really a lot of patriotism. There's really, in history class, they talk about their country as just, they're really proud of it. And there's nothing wrong with being proud of your culture, but I think it's also important to educate people about other cultures. And how is it that, like, are we truly living to the American dream? Are we actually doing the things that the founding fathers actually were meant to do? Are we living by the Bill of Rights, or are we just fixing them to fit what we believe to be true? So we also have to do those things, because I think a thought experiment that I have is, for example, Thomas Jefferson or something, traveling in time and coming to 2018, seeing the world, seeing our technology, seeing this machinery of abundance that we have, and how much of a lack of interest and communication we actually have, and be like, I'm pretty sure he could be like, why the fuck haven't you changed this? Why haven't you done something? Why are you stuck to that? It's a completely different world. Wake up, you know? So I think here in Europe, at least, it's really nice to be able to walk down the street and not feel like, hey, someone might have a gun, or if that person sees me wrong, or I don't know, I throw a ball into a yard and I go grab it. Because I remember when I was a kid, at least, when I was playing football, sometimes the ball, like the football, would go over the yard, and we would go, or if the person wasn't there, we would knock. He wasn't there, we would go grab it. No harm intended. In the US, if you do that and you're brown or a person of color and there's a white racist, he can shoot you. He has all the right to shoot you because you're in his property.
Yeah.
And that's like, come on. That's so scary, actually. It's really scary.
But you have been accustomed to Eastern teachings as well. You've learned about Buddha and all that. So how do you see the difference in that sense from?
Well, I think one of the biggest things to, for example, like Tao teachers or things like that I've first studied the Eastern culture and just what the Buddha says and just like Eastern philosophy really about the way of life. Then a lot of the discoveries that have been made, like scientifically in the Western, can be proven, but the Westerns don't see it spiritually. They just see it materialistic, but they actually go hand in hand. I see the East as a philosophical part, and the West as the technological side. And I think it's important to be able to merge both of them. Because technology without a sense of spiritual growth, or actually understanding of our environments, our humanity, and how we operate, can be very detrimental. And that is what it's been doing right now. We have machines, we have abundant everywhere, but still we feel lack. We feel like there's something lacking in our life. Some connection, something that we don't understand. We don't know why we're here. So we keep doing detrimental things to our environment because we never get to understand our environment. Nature, for example, is the one thing that is free. It gives us water, gives you everything that you need to actually survive. And because it's free and we don't have a price tag in it, we don't value it. We devalue it. So somehow here in the West, we've kind of made like, if it doesn't have a price tag, it's not valuable. But we kind of value things more upon their price than anything else. So I think it's important to actually see the things that are fundamental for us, because money can't buy everything, you know, and that's the thing. And our world, the way we're going right now, if we keep going with the same technologies, with the same business mentality, it's fucked. And we're really in a critical point where we have to really look within ourselves and understand where can we go? How can we solve these problems that are crucial for our survival? And when you have presidents that are talking about climate change being a hoax and shit like that. People get confused. People don't know what to believe in, and they don't want to take responsibility for it. So it's important to actually slap them, or be like, not slap them, but like, be real, get real. There are many problems that we have to come solutions with, but we're humans. We solve problems. In 4 years, we created a nuclear bomb, the most destructive thing. In 4 years, we created something that was magnificent by just getting the scientist. If we can create something to destroy the world in 4 years, we can create something to make the world better in less than that. I'm 100% sure of that. But we need to come together, and we need to be real about that.
It's all a question of the motivation.
Yes. But if you have your president, for example, or someone talking about it being fake and that it's not real, then people are not going to get motivated about it. And they're not going to want to believe it.
No.
So we have to push for it. The people.
Yeah.
But I don't know, how do you view, for example, Eastern... Are you acquainted with any Eastern philosophies or anything like that?
Well, I have to be true. I don't consider myself a student of philosophy, but as you said, it complements each other. The way that the civilizations have grown in these times, they have taken a different path, but I presume they come to a point where they can settle together. And because of the advancements that we have in our technologies, we have been able to have the experiences of each other's countries and places and stuff like that. So we have been able to merge all of these together. And at this time, I don't see a point of having a discussion about like the difference between like Eastern and Western. The world has been globalized so much now that if you go to a rural place in some country in Asia, you can see the wonders of a smartphone happening. So there's no point behind it anymore.
Well, certainly the technology is something that is passed around quite freely, but values and systems, ways of thinking, cultures, they're way slower to adapt than to reach other places. So even if you have the ways of communication, they might be used very differently in different places, different countries.
I partly agree to it, but I see it as if there's some good aspect to any culture would be willing to take it up. I mean, most of the people in any culture would be willing to have progress, have improvements in their life. So if they see something good in other culture, they would definitely take it up, but it will take few generations maybe to make it their own, but it will happen. It has been happening. So
yeah, of course it has been happening. It's kind of like this mutual relationship that religion and science has. Like, they go hand in hand, because together they actually, by kind of contradicting each other and trying to prove each other wrong, they're actually helping us to understand the whole thing. Because, like, no matter what, you can be very religious, you can be very spiritual, and you can talk about what I feel, the energies, and all these things. But if you can't show it to a person, like, you can't solve the materialistic side of it as well, then you have an incomplete picture.
Yeah,
you have to make the whole picture.
Yes.
So I think we're in a world where it's like we have the super scientists to the right, and we have the super religious, and it's just like they're colliding, they're fighting, and somehow along the middle, there's the way, the truth. So we have to be able to merge them. That's at least what I see. I would consider myself to be very spiritual, but I'm also I'm a nerd, so I like to study things. I like to study math. I like to understand things. I like to study from my own perspective, but I like to see how they actually integrate into my life, into the universe, into material society or material reality. Yeah. So I think it's important to understand the mutual relationship that they have instead of fighting against each other.
Yeah, and I think this thing with science is trying to prove religion wrong and religion is trying to prove science wrong, I think that's a very big misconception that has been true in Europe for a very long time, but I think that's something that is utter nonsense, because it really actually deals with two different questions, or two different approaches to truth.
Yeah, exactly.
So religious more asking the question, why are things as they are? Science asking more the question, how do things work that are? So,
But I think science also asks the why, though. Like why are these atoms like this? Why is dark matter there? So, why can we get that? I think they answer the same question, yes, but the same questions but different approach. I think.
Yeah, I mean you can formulate it in different ways. What I meant with that is with the why. What is the
source behind it, or
kind of the source, the more transcendent meaning or behind it, and science looking more at what is there, how does it work, and even if you like go to the step and okay, why is it there? Well, in a sense, you're still looking at how did it work that it came to be. So like you're looking at the material side and you're looking at the spiritual side, like what does it apply to our lives? And these, like, in that sense, it actually never has been a contradiction. It's just something that here in the West we have played against each other for a very long time.
That's not just in the West. I mean, the point of science versus religion, it's not West versus East. Mm-hmm. You have great minds, great scientists in every parts of the world. So if you're a scientist, you don't have to believe in religion from, like, if you're a scientist from any country, you don't have to be believing in religion. No. So it's not a civilization thing.
I think the greatest mistakes the majority of scientists do is just fixating on the material thing. Because when you look at, for example, one of the greatest minds, like Richard Feynman, Nikola Tesla, or Einstein, they were all very spiritual in a sense. They all talked about this connection. For example, Tesla said, "I'm 100% sure there is a source of knowledge for everything. I just haven't been able to reach it yet." Einstein talked a lot about God. And he was saying that his ideas, he didn't come up with them. They were given to them. He somehow tapped into something, and it was given to them. So these are very spiritual people. So they didn't only see at the material, they understood both parts. And from my own personal experience with life, is when I see the scientists, like, okay, you have the data. That's great. But if you can't interpret the data, it's useless. And I think when a scientific person closes himself to spirituality, for example, I'm like, you're so focused on the material, and the material is really the logic side of the brain, right? And then you have the emotional, the point to point every single day. But I think the main thing to take out of this, at least, is that if you're a scientist and you never open yourself up to be able to have any type of spiritual experience or actually seek for that, you will never be able to validate it for yourself, because it's something that you have to experience. It's how you interpret it. The great minds, they didn't get their answers because they tried to interpret the words of other people. They came up with themselves. How from their own personal experience, how do I get this knowledge? They thought for themselves. They didn't restrict themselves to just this. They didn't square themselves up. They were open about it.
Oh, but they built upon what other people have discovered.
But they also didn't just box themselves like this discovery. No, they were open about it. How does this work? Just openly question things, and be able to willingly be able to experience them. Yeah, because I would consider myself to have very deep spiritual experience, even mystical experiences. Mm-hmm. And in those mystical experiences, when you have a realization, a really deep realization, it's kind of like seeing the universe for what it is. Transparent. Once you have that transparency and you understand where you come from, then it's all about being able to mix both of them. How does the math, how does the scientific part, and how does the experience combine? And they merge many times. At least for me, that's what has happened. But what I'm learning is, how can I put this into something that I can teach others? And that's the most difficult part, because you can have a realization, but be able to merge it and make it in a logical sense that helps others understand it. That's really the hardest thing to do, I believe.
I guess what I can comment on that is that, yes, spiritual or personal experiences, absolutely, they're fundamental to our growth. But it's also very important that we build on experiences that others made, that we I mean, you don't expect everyone to invent the wheel anew.
No, I don't think it's about tossing the technologies, the old technologies, or anything like that.
And-
They're
But this
fundamental
is
tools that
something-
you
yeah.
need. Of
This is
course.
something that I see, that to me seems something that happens oftentimes in this time, that when people talk about questioning things, they say like, oh, we have to get rid of everything that we had before. We have to get completely new, whatever mindset. We have to have new society. We have to change all of our society structures because we came to the realization that whatever we have believed the last 20 years has been totally wrong. And
it could be, but I don't think we like, even if we were completely wrong in the ways that we have lived life, you should still take the good parts, because no matter how wrong you've made something, and it's like with any invention, you can do something wrong, but you can also do something good. So learn from what's wrong and take the good. Don't throw everything away.
Yeah, and exactly that's what I see the problem, that many people, or in that process, people have nothing that defines what is good. So they don't know, okay, because they have no measure for what is good and what is bad, they can't say, okay, this is a good thing, we keep that. But because we are in the West right now restructuring the basics, the fundamentals, we have absolutely nothing that guides us in saying this is good and this is bad.
And I think this is where we need to get people together, because I don't think it's a question that can be, or it's a question that can be answered like by just a few individuals.
It's not an individual.
It's not an individual question, of course not. It's a collective thing. Like, okay, these rules or these laws that we've created, these can be beneficial. These ones have been detrimental. We get life experiences. We listen to people and how certain things have helped them, how certain things have hurt them. We understand where one of us comes from, and then we try to create something out of it. But we need to have those conversations. Just like when they created a nuclear bomb, they got scientists from all over the world that knew completely different things. They were all specialized in their own fields, and they together merged and created a solution. So it's the same thing. You need people from different fields to be able to come to a conclusion. But we don't really do that. We don't have those big conversations, big conference from people all over the world, and getting the top scientists to work for something. Collectively, we need to. And we half-ass do it. Like the Paris Agreement is like, yeah, okay, we're going to do it, but we're going to try to do it. But each country is kind of doing it independently. Each country is like, okay, I'm going to try to solve this problem and things like that. I think we're wasting so much potential there. Get people from China to work with people from France, to work with people from the US. Make them work together. Because this is a global problem that we have to come up with. So that's where we miss, I think.
Definitely. That's the thing that I was talking about. Like the concept of scientists and people who believe in religion. There are different people who believe in each of these in this civilization. And Nathan has talked about. I don't know if you've been talking about East versus West kind of thing in that perspective, but that's the thing is the way that the world is right now and the problems that we face, it has consequences everywhere. So, as Paulo, you mentioned about Paris Climate Agreement, if, let's say, US has seceded from it, so they produce carbon dioxide a lot, let's say that. So that doesn't just impact US, that impacts every one of us.
And the US is a country that impacts the most, actually. So
yeah, so even a small amount of, let's say a tiny country with very minuscule size of population did that and produce a little bit of carbon dioxide. That little bit of carbon dioxide is still a carbon dioxide. So that still is in the air. That still is breathed by every one of us. So.
And I think the major problem with that is that we've really come to a place where it's really like a chain reaction. And we started that reaction, and we just keep feeding the reaction, and it's growing at exponential rate. These things don't grow linearly. They grow exponentially. And we have to do something before it runs out of control. And it's already running out of control. We don't have much time. We really don't. And these are conversations that we need to have.
And
So-
and one more thing, like in terms of culture, if that culture gives us pleasure, or if that culture gives makes us have a better life, in the sense of, like, let's say petroleum. Everyone uses petroleum all over the world, even if it's good or bad, because petroleum helps them to, like, let's say, drive a car, run a generator to produce electricity. So they will adapt to all of these culture things really fast, if that improves their life, or even if it's a negative thing, if they serves their purpose. So it's not east-west thing anymore.
Yeah.
As long as
no, and I think like this east versus west, I don't think that's a concept that we really that we talk about or that we promote here. I don't think at all that it's an east versus west problem. I think just in general, yes, the east is a lot more mystical, the west is a lot more materialistic, but ultimately there is also great science in the east, and there is great philosophy in the west as well, I would say.
It was mystical. It's not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay.
But I mean, I think also a lot of the Eastern philosophers, or even Western people, are actually really attracted to the Eastern philosophies nowadays. So when I was talking to a monk, for example, he told me that he was a monk in Thailand, and that in his temple, a lot of the monks that came from the West actually started coming at the age of 20 to 21. That's when they had like some type of spiritual urge to go there. So I think the West is really in a point where we've created so much technology, but spiritually the West is not very good. It's simply, we're lacking that. So, but we're looking for it, and we're looking for it in different ways. That's why many people are starting to take in meditation, yoga. These are practices that are becoming more prevalent. And as people get more in touch with themselves, we'll slowly be changing. But now it's not about now it's about understanding both of them, and also being able to bring the technology to the Eastern cultures that already have kind of like the philosophical knowledge and things, and be able to merge them together. Because we still need that technology to make people's lives better. It's abundance, you know. Everyone deserves abundance, and everyone deserves opportunities. So if we give those opportunities, technological opportunities to learn the internet, things like that, to different cultures, then I think we can come up with better solutions as well.
But do Eastern countries not have access to our technologies?
They do.
They do. How do they use them?
What do you mean by how do they use them? They use
So
them like
are
everybody
the
else
living
does.
standards in the Eastern countries, are they improving? Are they applying them in ways how they created this middle class in Europe or in the West? Is it getting in this direction in the East as well?
Of course, it is getting in that direction. If you talk about technology, it has been used like how we use it here in the West. It's not so mystical anymore, I would say.
No.
It has completely changed in past 300 or so years.
I think it's been more practical now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and what a little bit more what I want to get at is, Paulo, you're saying that they have already this cultural and this connection with themselves and the philosophy behind it. So if they just get our technology, they would be at a way better place.
but Paulo, that's also a generalization. That's not the thing.
No,
That's not-
I understand. Like, I don't think everyone in the Eastern, for example, everyone in Thailand follows the spiritual beliefs or the monks or anything like that. The monks sometimes help them solve some problems and things, but people still don't necessarily take on their practices very much. Just like in the West, we have Christianity, we have practices that we technically could use, but we don't want to use them. Because not everyone is a doer. A lot of them are just observers. They just want to observe the practices, and that's it. They don't want to actually implement them in their life. But what I found in my life is that implementing some of these Eastern philosophies has helped me understand many things about my life, boosting my energy, and just making me a better person. So you also have to try them. And I think they are very good tools that we can use. Because with the mind that we have right now, in the world that we have, our mind is too much outside. We're worrying all the time about what other people think on social media, all these things. It's just outside. How can I solve problems? And you just go on, and your mind just keeps going on and on and on. Sometimes it's good to just come back and be in touch with yourself. Am I happy? Am I overworking myself too much? Somehow we believe that working a lot is the best. the brain can only be focused for a certain amount of time. Once it loses its focus, you can be studying for a really long time and not be learning anything. So it's also not how much you do, but how you do it. So we have to understand these practices. We have to merge them, and we have to change the way we learn to make it more ideal. You can't throw them away because there's something crucial for them. So we have to be able to merge them, in my opinion, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, this is what you say, coming from a Western culture and then seeing, okay, I have certain parts that I can implement. Now, if you go to Eastern monks, I don't know, I don't think that they are using mobile phones. They're having our jobs.
They are using mobile phones.
They use phones.
They use phones.
They do.
Or like having like their living styles, their living conditions,
Well, I mean,
their culture around is very different from what we have here.
But the monk life is completely different.
Yes,
the whole point of the monk life is to be the simplest life ever.
But the thing is, like, everybody in the East is not a monk.
Exactly.
No.
And not everyone in the West will be a monk either.
Yeah.
So basically, what I mean is certain technologies that we have here, they work to a certain degree in Europe, but I see in many places where we have brought technology, they have been misused and they have been not applied properly. And I mean, one technology that in particular, what I'm talking about right now is democracy. It is this giving the people a voice, giving the people the opportunity to decide what government they want. And if we look at Brazil, for instance, right now, what they voted for, or what the country through the last 20 years, the point that they got to, because they didn't know how to use this technology of democracy properly, they are in a economical crisis since 2010.
But democracy doesn't mean that you have to always vote liberal.
But
No, not at all. But I mean, you have to a certain culture. Like here in Europe, we got to this idea of, or to the mindset or to the culture that we as a people have to decide the best for us as a people.
But
many people, many cultures have not gotten to this point.
But okay, can I just say something?
Yes.
One of the things that Plato said is that democracy without educated people, it's useless. And I think that's the problem. And when you talk about technologies being misused, I think we in the West, we misuse technologies all the time. Oh, yeah. We have social media. We can spread the word. We can change. We can help each other. Yet we don't. Everyone misuses the technology. No matter whether it's East or West, we misuse them. And we misuse them because we remain ignorant. It's unless the civilization and the people actually become educated that we will make a change. It's getting the researches. Like, someone tells you something and you just believe it, don't fucking believe it. Do your research. If it matches, yes, okay. And then implement it. But don't just take it like how it is. Because technology is always misused. Think about the technologies that we have right now. Machines to create abundance and things like that. We could literally have a world where no one could go hungry. We waste so much food. We waste so many things. So we misuse everything because we don't value them. We don't actually give them the value, or actually think about how they can help us. We just use them for our entertainment. And
yeah, we don't value them, although there is a price tag on them.
Yes.
In terms of elections, you would see like it's not just about what will benefit me. Most of the time it's about like how you feel about that person, the one that you're voting for. And if that person makes you feel good enough, you're gonna vote for him. Yeah. So that is happening in most of the countries right now in the world. But that doesn't mean that the technology of democracy is a failure, or technology of democracy in non-Western countries are a failure. So democracy is always great, and and sometimes it feels like it's not working, but most of the time it does work, and when it works, it's great.
Yeah, and I mean, this is not what I meant at all. Like, technology, I don't believe has a good or a bad. I believe technology is always depending on how do people use it. How does the mindset or the culture behind it, how do they apply it to their life? So there can be a good way of democracy, there can be a bad way of democracy. Can be a good way of monarchy, there can be a bad way of monarchy.
I mean, in your terms, the good way of democracy in the West, I mean, you are saying in the Western countries as well. Let's say, example, Hungary, and what's happening in Hungary.
Oh yeah,
that's Europe.
Yeah, and I mean,
Greece.
even in
Greece.
Spain.
Greece, Spain,
Spain, there's-
Germany as well. Like, come on, it's Sweden, right-wing party getting, what was it, 30%? I don't know. I don't remember. 23, I think. Something like that. But like, we are breaking our own democracy right now, and that is really a...
But I think it's a problem of it, like I said, it's a lack of education. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about, for example, here in Sweden is they have a country, and the majority of them have been white for a long time. Swedish have been very open. But then you get the refugees. And you just want to take them in because you're helpful. You're open. You're like, yeah, let's help them. But you never consider the social implications, and you never do something to be able to implement it in society properly. So then you isolate them, and they isolate, and they go within themselves, and they create their own communities. That's not the whole point of it. The whole point of it is being able to integrate and educate the Swedish people to actually let them know where these people are coming from. Get to talk to them. Because I think many of the Swedes that I've met that have been faced with the immigrants or anything like that, they haven't talked to them. Have a conversation. Know where they're coming from. And allow yourself to actually see how good your country is. The fact that you're actually helping people and that you're giving them the land is something to be proud of. But if you don't talk to them, if you don't know how they feel about it and how you feel about them, there's going to be the miscommunication. And you're going to feel like they're taking away their jobs or they're trying to do you harm or things like that. So it's important to implement these things correctly, to educate the civilization and make people also learn how to think for themselves. Not just, I read this article and it's correct, because there's a lot of fake news now. A lot of fake news.
Yeah.
You really don't know what the fuck is real or not. No. Like when you go on Facebook, you can see an article and then can be 30 pages that just have the same article, might be completely fake. So who can we trust? Where are we getting our sources from? And I think the major problem is that if politicians also don't give credit to correct media, to proper media that is actually trying to teach important information, then real information just gets lost.
You just go out and experience. That's the best way
Yes.
of understanding what's happening in the world.
Go talk to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you think that best way for the future of politics and of society would be to go back into small communities?
No,
No.
never.
No.
That's not.
I don't think so. No.
No.
I think we need to have conversations with people from other communities. I think we're able to have to understand where they're coming from. That's what's important, to truly understand, to travel, to talk. Because if you never talk to, for example, a person from Mexico, like as an American, for example, that somehow you've been taught to believe that, because, when your president calls us illegal aliens, that has an effect on people. Like, people will see you as an alien. Like, they don't see you as a person. They don't know your needs. They don't know your background, so they can't empathize with it. They just, all they're thinking is, I'm being protected. They're taking my land. They're taking my jobs. I'm so fearful now. I'm so fearful, instead of understanding them. Because the majority of Mexicans that go to the U.S., for example, they just want a better life for themselves, and they actually want to help the country. Because the country allows them, it gives them the opportunity. So they want to create jobs. They want to create businesses. It's actually good for the society. They don't realize that because they're so afraid of taking their jobs. And I'm sorry, but someone that doesn't speak your language, doesn't know anyone in your country, takes a job, it doesn't mean that there's no jobs for you. It just means you're a fucking lazy ass and you don't want to learn shit. And you have to take that shit and you have to be honest about it. Be honest about it. Stop blaming your problems to everyone. You are responsible for your problems. But we become such pussies. Like, we really have. So we have to get to the root of that. And it's a hard pill to swallow. But if we don't swallow the hard pills of life, we're going to keep doing wrong to our society and our climate and everything.
You brought up jobs. If you look at it right now, the advancement in technology is so much better, so much grown, that any job is not safe anymore.
No.
So, yeah.
In the next 10 years of machine learning, who knows what jobs are going to be actually usable or not.
I was reading this article a few weeks ago. It says, like, programming jobs will be taken over by computers. So even those safer jobs are not there anymore. So I guess in like 10 to 15 next 10 to 15 years, you'll have to think about the society as a whole fundamentally in any country in the world.
Yeah. I think so too. I mean, we're going to have to come to, like we were discussing earlier, some type of universal basic income.
Yes.
And I think they've tried universal basic income in Finland and things like that. And the majority of people that have actually had that basic income, like, I think it was in an African country. They tried in 30 different African countries, and they thought, well, we're just going to give them money, and they're going to become lazy. They're just going to take the money and not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But once the people felt supported by their country, by their community, they started to create their businesses. They started to learn things. So if people are supported, if people do feel safe, I think they will proactively want to create something, because if they're getting something back from the society, they want to give something back. That's how we interact as human beings. If someone gives us something, and we feel safe, we want to give it back. We want to create it. I mean, not everyone is going to do this, but the majority of people that at least have some decency and drive want to do something good for people.
But then think about this. If you have universal basic income, and if you don't have to work as much as you do before, how are you going to use that time? And if you don't find a better way to spend that free time that you have, let's say, for example, people are coming up. I've heard this, like 4 days work week. So what are you going to do next additional 1 day that you get, because you already have 2 days of holidays? So what are you going to do about one more additional day?
There was a talk about this Japanese researcher that was working for MIT doing artificial intelligence, and he was working like 9 to 6 days a week or something like that. So he was working quite a bit, and he got to a point where it was like, well, now that I've worked so much and that machine learning has done all these things, I think machine learning and these technologies can really help us get back in touch with what it means to be human. I think if we have those free times and we have the space and the opportunity to explore our hobbies, to explore the things that we want to do, people will want to do it. But if they feel constantly stressed out about work and they're just focusing on that, that's it. It's my work life. I'm stressed. They're not going to see their hobbies. They're not going to have that space to explore. But I think if you give people the space, they will at least.
Now, let's think about how is this working nowadays already. Because, for instance, here in Sweden, here in Europe, we have a pretty good basic income. Like, everyone who does work gets at least the least amount of that you need for survival.
Until that will be mechanized.
Oh, and many of the people actually get more than you need for pure survival.
But in Spain, for example,
it's
too little.
Yes, of course. In many parts of the world, it's way too little what people get, and it's getting even less. However, in parts of the world where people don't need to worry about their job, about their income, what do people do with their free time? Do they get more in touch with themselves? Do they use it in a good way?
That's the thing. Like you said, people don't worry about. I think it's time to worry about not having those kind of jobs as well, because technology will grow rapidly. Machine learning and AI will grow so much rapidly that those safer jobs are not going to be safer anymore in, let's say, 5 or 10 years.
I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have to constantly reinvent ourselves. And if there's no need to reinvent yourself, you're going to become stagnant. But if society changes, if the world changes around you, and everyone is reinventing themselves, if everyone has a drive to do something, to explore their hobbies, we will adapt to their environment, because that's what we do as human beings. We follow what others do. The majority of us follow what others do. So if people just spend their free time partying, not doing productive things, the safest thing to do is to fit in. To just do those things.
The future of the world is, have you seen the movie WALL-E?
Yeah.
WALL-E.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be like that.
Hmm.
Maybe not so much inactive, but it is going to be like that eventually.
I mean, I think right now we're at a point where, like, we can go anywhere. Like, we're at a critical point where we can decide what type of society we want. Because for the past 2,000 years, we've worked in technology, we've worked in all these things, we've sacrificed so much collectively. Mm-hmm. But now that we sacrificed so much and we've created so many things, it's time we all reap the benefits of the sacrifices we have all made. But to do that, we have to acknowledge the sacrifices that have been made and the opportunities that are given to us. And where do we want to go from this? And let's stop thinking about the survival instinct, because that's a thing that we all have. That's called the things like the bias.
Fight or flight?
No, it's like I think on the brain, like, because when we were hunter and gatherers, we didn't know whether we were going to survive or not. So we were constantly in kind of like flight or fight, but it was more like the survival bias or something like that. So if now we realize we're safe, we can become abundant, we can really change society and live more freely. How do we want to live. And this is something that we have to ask for everyone. What do we want to do? What can we do? So I think at the end of the day, humans just want to be happy. We want to be appreciated. We want to have fun. We want to experience. We literally live for experiences. If you work 30 hours a week or 60 hours a week, is to get a pay job so that you can buy something or go somewhere to experience something. Else you wouldn't work.
The only sad thing is that usually the way how we want to be happy is on costs of others.
I wouldn't necessarily agree that 100%.
Not 100%, but this is usually how it works out.
What example? Yeah, I would like an example too.
Can you give us an example?
An example?
Yes.
Of how, well, I mean, that's the benefit of, like, for instance, watching movies the entire day. That is something that makes us happy in the short term.
Sure.
And this is something,
But how does it impact other people?
Like if you
it affects other people that you don't work, you don't do your part to society.
But I'm saying, like, if you work 60 hours a week, you work, you get your money, and then you want to do whatever free time, because the whole purpose is that we work so that we're able to experience something or do something for ourselves. Whether that is a trip, whether it's a vacation, whether it's buying a TV to watch something, we do those things to experience something. That's the whole premise about it. So we as humans, we crave experiences. That's really what we live for. We live for the experiences. That's why we fall in love. That's why we break up. Yeah. It's the emotions. It's the whole thing. So I would
rather say it's for the relationships. It's not only for the experiences.
It's the experience. A relationship is an experience. The experience of love. And then the experience of being heartbroken. And then the experience of being heartbroken and then finding love again gives you... For every bad, there's a good. Yeah. So that's just the way the world is. Yeah. So...
Yeah, I mean, if we're already at the part then of love, then having sex is something that is it's a very common thing that where people try to find happiness, but they don't care often usually what is with the other person. For instance, for men who go and buy sex, they don't care about what the woman
because
is.
I think our sexuality has been suppressed. We don't understand our sexuality. If we don't understand how we work our sexual energy, if we never work with it, and we're never actually taught how to express it, that's what happens. Because if you constantly learn about your sexuality in porn and things like that, and not actually getting in touch with yourself, your view of sexuality is corrupted. And our view of sexuality is corrupted because many of us are actually afraid of expressing our sexuality for what it truly is, to explore, to feel vulnerable, because we're never taught how to do it. All we see is porn. When you see porn, that is not real. That's not what you're actually going to feel. It's fake. It's about the intimacy. It's about being with a person. It's not just the visual or anything like that. It's the touch. It's the smell. It's many things. But we need to get in touch with that. So unless we actually teach people from an early age that this is something fundamental for them, because somehow we push sexuality from children. Like, you don't learn it until a certain age and things like that. And then it's half-assed. Like, you come from this and stuff like that. But they don't teach you about your body, how to explore your body, what do you like, how to respect others. These are things which we have to teach. Because at the end of the day, it's something that we all want to express. Just like we want to eat, we want to have sex. It's natural for us. But unless we explore it and accept it, then it's corrupted. And I think that's where the problem lies. It's not whether it's something good or bad, but how we think about it. I think us hurting someone else, like, it's really just a reflection of the insecurities. Because I think there's a lot of miscommunication along the way. And if we don't feel like we can communicate to a person, get to know their needs, and also be able to express our needs, it's very difficult to have those real relationships.
Yeah. And I mean, usually why we hurt each other is because we don't care about the other. It's not... I mean, sometimes it's intentional because we want to get the feeling of being supreme to the other. That happens sometimes, but that is, of course, because of some hurt that we've experienced in our past. But sometimes we also hurt each other because we're ignorant, because we don't care about how does the other person feel about it.
But it's also, do we care about how we feel about it? Like, are we actually doing this consciously?
Well, we're doing it for our pleasure.
Yeah, but I mean,
we're not doing it for a long term, because we have lost the sense of sacrificing. A sacrifice is nothing else than to say, okay, I'm not going it's a delayed gratification. That is a different word for sacrifice, I would say. Delayed gratification is to give up something now to have something better in the future. And this is something that we have really lost in our culture, I would say. And
we want the instant gratification. That's the thing. We want the instant pleasure.
Yeah.
And
well, we have the options, and because we have those options, we use them. And this is my initial point. If we have this technology, even in Africa, I don't know for how long they made this experiment in those countries and how it is working today. However, if we look into, and this is we're all the way back, if we look at countries like Sweden, where we have those options, where you either can say, oh, I will delay my gratification, have it better later, or I will just have all of the gratification now and in the moment, people are choosing to do them in the moment, in the here and right now. And I would say that is not something that is only something that will or can happen here in Europe. I think this is something that is basic to all human beings.
That's correct.
yeah, it is. But I mean, I think if you never had in your life experience a moment where something was difficult and you kept working for it, and then you pushed through all the adversity, then you had that satisfaction of like, wow, I did this, I learned from this. You never had such an experience, or no one has ever taught you that things take time. You just want it. You just want to grab it. And if your whole society relies upon that and everyone does it, it's very difficult to break norm. So, for example, I think meditation, for example, is a great practice for that. Or just being able to control your sexual energy. Things like that is very important. Being able to balance yourself, to control yourself. That's something that you have to work upon. Not just get a thought, feed the thought, and that's it. Because I mean, there was some research done behind pornography, for example, and how it affects your brain. When you watch pornography, the dopamine levels are the same as when you take cocaine. They get to that point. So essentially, every click, every time you switch videos, it goes like that. So you're constantly feeding your brain this wanted, and like complete blissfulness in a sense, and it's just quick. So then, when you have that the best thing you can feel as a human being, or one of the most natural experiences that you can have by yourself anytime you want, that creates a lot of social anxiety because there's no urge, there is no need to explore yourself with other people. So we have to get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem, in my belief, is that we're too afraid to actually experience with people. We're too afraid to actually experience our body. It comes to insecurity of, do I feel safe with my body? Do I feel open? Because like the world is a pretty tough place, and unfortunately, many kids somehow they've been sexually assaulted, and they really have. So when you have kids that have been sexually assaulted, that don't feel safe, that don't feel like they can explore their body in a safe environment, they just seclude and they try to look satisfaction and just block those feelings. So it's important to teach people how to explore themselves, how to be open, vulnerable. That's really what it comes down to with true sexuality is how open can you be with other people? And that's hard. It's hard to be naked around other people. It's hard to not just literally naked, but also figuratively naked.
Exactly, figuratively. Yeah. And I mean, the same thing with the gratification is not just with porn, it's also with all of the games, with achievements, like, those easy, small achievements that we get in. This is why the gaming industry is so popular and so strong these days.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to solve a problem or you're going to embark in a hard task, be real with yourself and constantly remind yourself why you're doing it. Because there's going to be times when it's going to be difficult. That's any challenge, any type of growth requires difficulty. But if you keep telling yourself why you're doing it for and you're inspired and you find some type of motivation behind it, then you're able to push it through and accomplish it. And once you accomplish it, you'll feel more accomplished than any little game, any instant gratification will give you. And I think once someone does that and they learn the process behind it, they will want to do it again and again and again. Because the process of growth, it's like the process of change. Difficult at first, messy in the middle, and then great at the end. but we have to be willing to be uncomfortable as human beings. I feel like we're so comfortable now. We don't want to feel bad. Like everything's like, I have to be happy. I have to be happy. Like, why do you have to be happy? What if you are already happy? What is it that you're actually looking for?
Well, I mean, if you say that happiness is what the goal of life is, then instant gratification is exactly your answer.
And I don't believe there's a big misconception about happiness. Because happiness and sadness, they're things which correlate with each other, but you have to come to a point of middle. You have to appreciate both of them. I think at the end of the day, we have to come to an understanding that life is not just the good things, it's also the bad things. And learn to have a loving relationship with those things. Because your hardships, the things that have been difficult in your life, they're your greatest masters. They're the ones that are actually going to build your character, that are going to allow you to have compassion, to look at life differently. Because if you've never gone through a hard time in life and you see someone suffering, you can't relate to them. You're just like, I don't understand you, I just want to push you away. But if there's been times in your life when you've been pushed down, when you feel down low, and you've grown past it, and someone else is going through it, you can have that wisdom and you can help them. You can say, hey, I wish someone was there to help me, but now I can help them as well. That compassion. But we have to be able to be uncomfortable and be real with ourselves. That's the most difficult thing. We try to run away from our emotions. We try to run away from our problems, and we never face them. And those problems, those traumas, everything that we have, they have a subconscious impact in every single decision that we make. That's something that we have to understand. The place and the attitudes that we come from, the majority of us are actually not conscious about them because we're working on old habits, old patterns, from a place where you're not anymore. So I think it's important to see where is it that you are in life right now. I think for me, at least, this is something that I learned from my personal experience, is I lived in the States legally. I always felt like I didn't belong, like I couldn't do anything in society. I moved here and I carried that feeling with me, not realizing that, hey, I'm actually in the safest country in the world. There is abundance of opportunity. I am loved. I can have love and relationships, but I'm stopping myself because I'm living in the past. So go to the past, heal yourself. Those feelings of unworthiness, talk to that part of you. Cry it out if you feel like it, but don't make them impact your life anymore because you're not there anymore. End that, because at the finish of something, it's a new beginning. So allow yourself to have a new beginning. Allow yourself to be happy. Allow yourself to view your what's it called? Your present experience for what it actually is. Not what it's been from before, but where you are right now, where you stand, what you know, where you want to go. Because I think when we were kids and things happened to us, we didn't know how to handle them. A kid doesn't know how to handle it. It looks for the mom for answers. It looks for all these things. But now as an adult, you have experience. You have knowledge. You have wisdom. So you're prepared for things to happen again. So be willing to put yourself out there and understand and grow from them.
And the way how we Christians would say it is, bring them before Jesus because Jesus heals you. Give them up before God because He is there to take your burdens. And
I think at the end of the day, it's coming to realization that things from the past or fears from the future, things you can't control. You're allowing them to affect you. Come to that, accept it, and let it the fuck go. It doesn't matter anymore. It's difficult because we want to create a story behind it. We want to create a story of we suffered, it's the same thing, like suffering is something that we create. Pain is real. Yes, you experience that pain. But the reason why you're suffering, you're not there anymore. You're suffering because you want to suffer. You somehow created this story and you defined yourself to this story. You defined yourself to that experience because you reacted negatively to that experience. See the experience for what it actually is. See it for what it can teach you. Move on. So I guess we can just wrap it up. And thank you, Sha, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was very nice also getting a little bit of your experience. And thank you everyone for listening to us today. Thank you for joining us, listening all this way. Just like Shaw, you can come visit us. You can join into our podcast. We're very open. We're very looking forward towards having more topics, more life experiences, people from different parts of the continent, or different continents coming by here, sharing their experience. And yeah, have a great week.
Yep. Thank you for watching.